Welcome to the Drishtikon Show. I'm Desh Kapoor, and we are here with our next episode of our geopolitical series with Mr. Ankush Bhandari. He's a geopolitical expert, and he's a co-author of Geopolitics Redefined: Punctured Truths and Glamorized Lies.
Lies.
So today we'll actually discuss the history of the Indo-US relations. Since India's PM, Mr. Narendra Modi, is preparing to visit the US, and he's getting an unprecedented welcome, and program is being set up here in the US, as well as the White House. So, like, it's a long way from where he was actually denied the US visa before he was a prime minister to where we are now. So that is something that we'll discuss, the entire history of how the Indo-US relationship has, been configured or has shaped. Namaste, um, Ankushi, and welcome
Namaste,
to the show.
Deshji. Thank you so much again for inviting me to your show.
Hmm.
So, yeah, it's a very, the burning topic of the town that how the India-US relation will take place when Prime Minister Modi will be visiting the White House in a couple of days. He has his stopover in New York, and then he will also be addressing the Indian diaspora in the lawns of White House. And even if you know, Biden has itself claimed that in the summit, G7 summit, that he's getting a lot of calls from the Indian Americans in US, and he don't know how he can accommodate thousands and thousands of people
Right,
to meet Modi ji. So
right.
yeah,
So I think what we can do is we can go back in the history and see how
yes,
India and US, as two nations or as two group of
democracies.
people, have actually interacted, because the whole history goes beyond or before the Indian independence itself.
Yes, absolutely.
So let's go back to there, and like, if you can take us through that, that'll be great.
Yeah, yeah, sure. So it's not only go back through the independence of India in 1947, but it also goes beyond the American revolutions. So
uh,
if you see, the Indian contacts with India has started before the American Revolution, when the
mhm.
soldiers, the seamen who had lived both in the American colonies as well as in the Indian India. So during the last quarter of the 18th century, several American ships have visited the Indian ports in connection with the trade. And this history is never being taught, I think, neither in India nor in America.
Mm.
So we have to tell because the relation between two countries is always a relation between two people. It's people to people contact. Administration came and go, right? So going back to the history, when it was not the United States of America, it was called the United States of Philadelphia.
Mm.
In 1978, in the United States of Philadelphia reached Pondicherry, and there was two ships which by the name Hydra and Grand Trunk, which was sent to India.
Mm.
And legal authority to the Indo-US trade was given by the J treaties of 1794 between England and America. And then Benjamin Joy of Boston, he was appointed as a consulate general
Mm.
in 1792 in Kolkata.
Okay.
Now at that time it was Calcutta, but now we call Kolkata. So he was appointed at that. So even the Indian freedom fighter, if you see, both the countries as missionaries, tourists, intellectuals, Indian freedom fighters, they have very cordial and mutual contacts with each other through their letters, through their books. Even they, many of them, in 1815, the American Manhattan missions was established. These missionaries gave the first-hand information about India to Americans. That what is India, how it was established, how it is working, what are the problems they have. And these missionaries have a great interest to establish the schools and also distribute the religious literature between both the countries.
Mm.
Yeah. So at that time also there were a lot of humanitarian work which was done between the between the both the countries, especially when the famine hit in 1897, 1899. There was a lot of humanitarian effort done by Americans at that time to help India, and vice versa when America was hit with famines.
Hmm.
So yeah, they also have a lot of. If you go to the history, they have written a lot about how the Indian culture is, how their religions is, how their festival is, and how fascinating they are. So
Right.
just to summarize, I will just tell that how what they have written. The Stephen N. Hay, he was one of the main writers American has given to the world. He has said that the writing of Emerson, Thoreau, Whitman, and of the Sanskrits, Hopkins, Lehman, and Whitney has helped me and Americans in the 19th century a huge respect for the Indian rich cultural heritage.
Right.
So that's what he has mentioned. And how can we forget that in 1883, the Brahmo Samaj leader Mr. Majumdar, he lectured in many American cities, and very famous quote of Swami Vivekananda when he attended the 1893 the World Parliament of Religion in Chicago. He said with the opening words, "Brothers and sisters of America," and there was huge applaud. People stand up, and he got a standing ovation for that.
Right. But I think,
So, mhm,
like initially in those days, there was also this whole view of how Hinduism and how the Indians were looked at was also kind of colored by their link to the British, as well as you know the evangelical like viewpoint of how the other religions or other like people are, right. So there
right,
was positive as well as there was a very like
negative.
negative
Yes,
like
yeah.
viewpoint also, and like characterization. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that was very in line with like I don't want to use the word bigotry, but like in like many sense an intolerance for like people who have a different way of life and different way of living. And I
Right.
think that 1893 that you're talking about, I think that was a very big time. After that, a lot of people
And
came.
that was a twist in the history of the relations between them.
Right. Right.
Because when Vivekanand ji came to Chicago on September 11th, right, 1893,
Hmm.
and he said that brother and sister when he was applauded. After that, the relations between the two countries started at the historian levels, at the academic level. Even everybody knows about Lala Lajpat Rai ji, right? He was a great freedom fighter, and Americans at that time start listening that what Indians are suffering at the hands of the cruel British rulers, because they have also suffered the same a couple of centuries back, right? And
Right.
they have fought a lot of war, and it was called the first civil war, or the and how they can get united and drag the Britishers out of their mainland. So when Lala Lajpat Rai ji visited United States in 1905, he went there in order to tell the American people about the need of the Indian independence, and he was the guy who let the American knows the exact picture of what Indians are suffering.
Hmm.
A Hindu impression book written by him was published in America in 1916. So you can see the influence of the Indian independent fighters, freedom fighters, they have on the American society at that time, that they were able to get their book published in 1916. He was very much influenced by the American life and its democratic institutions.
Hmm.
So he felt that, and as an Indian student, could learn a lot from the United States and vice versa.
Right.
So that's why he wrote a book. Similarly, the American lady by the name of Catherine Mayo, she also visited, influenced by Lala Lajpat Rai ji books and his teaching in the various institutions. She visited India in 1925 and 26, and she
Hmm.
wrote the book Mother India.
Hmm.
And she highlighted a lot of things, And he also highlighted that, okay, when Rabindranath Tagore, the great poet and the author India has ever produced, right?
Hmm.
When he visited America in 1912, 13, 16, 17, 20, 21, 1930, he has also maintained a very cordial relation with the American authors, because at that time there was no internet system. You have the books, you have to write the books, it have to get published, and it has to be distributed to a proper channel of libraries, schools, colleges, university level, right? So he has also done a lot of everlasting, I will say, impression on Americans of the Indian life, the literature and culture. And
Right.
one of the great authors, Stephen Haynes, was so impressed. He has written in his memoir that on his part, Kapoor carried back with him to India many ideas and impression from United States, and consistently he advocates the relationship between the India and US. And he want to say that eastern and the western branches of Indo-European family should exist and can play a very vital role for the democracies to be established across the world. So that was the vision almost 100 years back, you can say,
Right.
because this all started in 1912 to 1925, 26, right?
Right. And around the
Yeah.
same time, 1913, uh, two Sikh gentlemen, Baba Jawala Singh and Baba Vasakha Singh, they
Yes.
were, immigrants from into California from India, and they set up the Gadri Conclave, which became the Gadar Party in
Right.
Sacramento.
Yes.
And then Kartar Singh Sarabha came, and he started a newspaper, the Gadar.
Yeah.
And Kartar Singh Sarabha, many people do not know, but was the hero of Bhagat Singh himself.
Right. Right.
So I think there was a very big movement that was started from US
Yeah.
for
And
India's independence.
yeah, and addition to that, if you see that, as you mentioned, the Gadar party, Lala Hardayal, right? It was Lala
Hmm.
Hardayal who has done a lot of work, uh, and the Gadar party was only established under him. So
Hmm.
he said that we have to come forward and fight for our common causes. So they said, okay, if you have to come for our common causes, we have to start a weekly magazine. So they started the Gadar weekly magazine. And Mr. MC Changla, he was there in Sacramento. He observed that he said that the people of United States always sympathized with the aspiration of the people, Indian people, for freedom. Indian political leaders have always found a platform in our country, to propagate their views. These are the experts I'm reading out
Mhm.
from what he has written. Okay,
Right.
so it was and after that there were a lot of organization built up in America for the cause of liberation, for our cause of independence. And it was the Indian League of America, the Society for the Advancement for India, National Committee for the India Freedom, Friends of the Freedom for India. These
Hmm.
all are based in America. Home Rule League for America and India. So
Mhm.
these all the organizations which were not only set up by the Indians who
Hmm.
were here, but by the Americans who sympathize very much for the cause of their freedom. So
Right.
if we see that relation between India and America has is beyond the 21st or 20th or 19th century, it's go beyond, till up to 17th and 18th century. And they have also played a role. Basic, it was a very minimum, but they have played a very vital role for the independence of India from British rule.
See,
You
one of
know,
the things is that the Indian, ethos and the American ethos, the way it started off as the founding fathers here set the whole ethos was of freedom and liberation and seeking. That kind of
yes,
aligned very well with the Indian ethos that we have always had. So there
right,
was a natural alignment in terms of democracy, which was always natural for the Indian, population, because we
right,
have had, democracy for a long time now.
Yes,
in the history as well. And
right.
so there was national alignment. So that is how, like, there was a very close this thing. But
Relation
somewhere
between both.
around the time of independence, I think, like, something went off. After
Yeah,
that, like, there was a misalignment that happened between the two polities. So I
yeah.
think we, yeah.
Yeah, even if you remember, it was not only the Indian thinkers and the American thinkers, the scholars, the scientists who were together. Even President Woodrow Wilson, he
Hmm.
has delivered in the Congress, which was a great inspiration to the Indian freedom fighters. He said, America is prepared to fight for the ultimate peace of the world and for the liberation of its people, for
Hmm.
the rights of nation, great and small, and for the privilege of men everywhere to choose their way of life and of obedience, for the right of those who submit to the authority to have their voice in their own government,
Hmm.
for the right and liberties of small nations, for a universal dominion of right for such a concert of free people as shall bring peace and safety to all the nation and make the world itself at last free.
Hmm.
So it's a strong words, right? And but on the other hand, US government doesn't want to displace Britain because Britain was at the time the most powerful country on the earth, right?
Right.
So
And I
but
think
it,
there's a
it
natural alignment. I mean, yes, the independence war happened against the British, but later on, like when the US took on the mantle from, the UK, it also took on a lot of colonial baggage from them as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because the slavery and all those stuff which was left by the Britishers was, I will, in my point of views, were taken over with the folded hands or the open hands by the Americans because they were not aware at that time that this is inhuman. But with the passage of time and the coming of several movements here, so it has now you hardly see anything on the streets of US, right? So
Yeah, and so I think, like, there was one interesting factoid that I read from one of
mhm,
the books by Seymour Hersh,
mhm,
that as early as 1950, the US was given a base in northern areas of Pakistan to spy against the Russians
yeah,
as early as
because
1950. And that,
yeah,
like, at that time, the head of the British army, or the Pakistani army, sorry, was actually a British commander, and so
right,
was in India. So I think what is interesting is that, like, I often think that was giving the basis to US and UK against Russia a clause in the going in position or going in deal for India's independence and partition itself, because, like, if it wasn't so, then it couldn't have been done in just 1 year, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah. I think the partition was a brainchild of the West only, in my views. What I have read in the history and what I understand is my points of view only, because they know that they want to cut the Indian from the Central Asia.
hmm,
And if you see the Central Asia, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, all those Central Asian countries were the part of Soviet Union. And after the Second World War, now India has helped America a lot. And even I think people don't know that even the President Roosevelt has sent a huge letters thanking the then freedom fighters Nehru and Gandhi, that, oh, we are very indebted to you, you help us against the naval bases of Japan and all those. But what the Britishers, when they divided it, or the West when they divided it, it was the reason that the communism doesn't spread to the part of Asia, because Soviet Union at that time was like almost half of the Europe and Asia, right? Because it was a huge landmass. And in 1949, China also accepted that Communist Party of China, and India gives a thumbs up to them. okay, we are fine if you are communist. And that was the reason, one of the reason I will say, that America and the West were very scared that the communism may not spread to India also. And this is, and the other reason which I understand is recognition of the communist regime of China, which India has just, the Korean War, the American Vietnam War, the Afghan crisis. They were very annoying to the American leaders. But America, uh, when asked Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India, to join their bloc, they said, "We are going to be a non-aligned. We have our own values. We will acknowledge you very well, the idea that we should join, but we are not going to be a part of any bloc, but we will create our own bloc called non-aligned movement, in with India, China, Indonesia. There were 5 countries who joined that bloc. So that was the one, I think, main hurdle, or which have the bone of contention at that time between India and America, because America has thought that we have supported India through a long time during independence, so India will be on its side. But it doesn't happen at that
But I
time.
think, the way I always see it is that uh, the reason why partition really happened and was like kind of, supported in many ways, overt as well as clandestine way, both by UK as well as by extension the US, was that actually Pakistan opened itself up for all the needs, the geopolitical needs that US and UK had,
Right.
while India did not.
Right.
So
Until today also, India has
right,
a very
right,
independent policies, right?
right. So when when Pakistan opened itself up, they became the natural ally of US and UK, and India was to be relegated to the second rung, because in access to Central Asia and to Russia, Pakistan had a very important role for all these Western nations. India did
Right.
not have that important a role at that time.
Yeah.
So I think
Because
that was the
India,
main difference.
yeah, because if you see, when the Pakistan army invaded Kashmir, and the king of Kashmir said, "Okay, I'm going to be with a part as a part of India." Even then, British as well as American didn't came to the aid of India. When on January 1st, 1948, Nehru take this to the notice of the Security Council in UN. So they said, and United States was one of the main founder member of the UN, right? So they said, okay, it's not a Pakistan aggression. They just converted that thing into India-Pakistan question. You know, they said, and America remained a cryptic silence, maintained a cryptic silence on that, and didn't utter any word on that, which I think fueled
Right.
the relation of Indo-US into a bad shape.
Right. Because see,
They
at that
don't even
time, like
declare
if you really
Pakistan
look,
as an, yeah, they
right.
even didn't declare Pakistan as an aggressor.
Yeah,
American
because
delegate
right.
always keep on saying that you have to settle this issue by plebiscite, and all those things. And on addition to that, in early 50s, as you mentioned, they start giving aid, military aid to America, sorry, to
Right.
Pakistan.
Right. So actually, what happened was that, uh, at that time when the Kashmir thing happened, like when the aggression from Pakistan happened, it was by Pakistani army, uh, like using the tribals as the proxy. While it was led by Major General Akbar Khan, and everybody knows that because Major General Akbar Khan has written a book on it, on
Yes,
how he did all those things.
yes,
Then, when they came in, actually, at that time, not many people realized that both the head of the Pakistani army and the Indian army were both British.
yeah.
And like even when the Indian commander, the second in charge, asked for reinforcements in Kashmir, the British commander actually rejected that. And that is what Nehru went with. When in the three resolutions that are there for the UN Security Council, the first, clause was that since Pakistan has
Is the
like changed
invader?
the whole thing,
Yeah.
destabilized the thing, they have to get out of Kashmir first.
Yes, that's the first
Then
route. Yeah.
India like will keep the normal presence of the army just to make sure everything is okay.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, if like the whole thing had to be restored back to the 19 like pre
47.
1947 whole
Status quo.
status, right?
Yep.
After that, when the peace is brought up, only after that the plebiscite could happen.
Yes,
Now the
exactly.
problem was that later on Pakistan actually sold, I would say sold the entire Aksai Chin area
To
in the
China.
Trans Karakoram agreement that it had with China. So
China.
the status quo was gone, and so were these entire UN resolutions made absolutely void because it could never go back to the same status ever again.
Yeah.
1947, Aksai Chin was part of India.
Yeah. So the thing is that even on June 22nd, 1962, United States makes a proposal that we should go for a plebiscite. It was Soviet Union who vetoed that. They said we are not going to do that. And the US press very vehemently criticized the India. You know what was the headlines in the New York Times? They said India hides behind Soviet veto.
That is the ridiculous part of it because the UN Security Council resolutions had very clearly three very clear steps. Plebiscite was the last one after the whole thing was brought back to the status quo of 1947. That could have
Exactly.
never happened after 1962, ever.
Exactly. And this thorn of animosity further went when India said we need our Goa back. Portugal was a part of NATO, excuse
Right.
me, and Portugal was a part of NATO. So America said India can't take the Goa back, which was a part of India from centuries immemorial, right? It
Right.
was Portugal who came there. They killed a lot of people there, established their churches, and it's an open secret from the 1400th century they are doing this. And when India said
Yeah,
we
they had the
need,
Inquisition, the Goan Inquisition, where they actually targeted Hindus, killed Hindus, as well
right,
as made sure that all the temples were destroyed.
yeah.
Right.
If you go to the when you unfold the history pages, it's not always very pleasurable, right?
Right.
They are also very hurtful to the normal people. So when Goa crisis happened, United States supported Portugal. At that time, also they put a resolution in NATO, which was vetoed against again by Soviet Union in favor of India. And then they said, okay, you are a part of a Soviet camp, which is absolutely absurd. India was always and has always been a part of non-aligned movement,
Right.
right? So wars can't bring anything. What they can bring? Dead bodies, nothing else. Destructions. So that's very important. Even when China attacked India in October of 1962, India asked UK as well as United States for military assistance. And Bhagat Vats, he was, I don't know if you know, he was a very senior journalist. And what he wrote is like to the end of the, page, we call it. So he has written, when Chinese attacked us in October of 1962, America and Britain give nominal aid, but with a sinister condition that you have to go with sit with Pakistan and resolve the Kashmir issue. They were
Right.
talking less of the China, but more of Kashmir, which was
Hmm.
completely absurd,
Right.
right? Because it's Kashmir is always was and will always be a part of India because
Because
because it has become a bone of contention between India and Pakistan, and the West can't build up the bases over there in Kashmir, which
right.
unless it is not resolved, so that they can't watch the Soviet Union, because as soon as they build up the bases there, they are right on the gate of Soviet Union at that time, right?
Right.
So that was the problem they were saying during the Cold War. So
And see, I want to like say this thing here. Kashmir is part of India not because India says so. It is part of India because of the deal during the India's independence that happened.
yes,
Like it was very clear by British that all the other states which were under Britain
princely,
like rule, like they would come to India or Pakistan as far as the Constituent Assembly thing was there. But as far as the princely states were there, their monarchs, because they were all monarchies, their monarchs would decide, irrespective of the population, where they would go. So there
yeah,
is no point in using the democratic ethos or democratic rules in a monarchy
yeah,
because that was not the case. And British were the ones who created that instrument of accession. You
right,
cannot use the democratic ideals now that you have on something that was created as a rule, like during the
exactly,
India's independence deal. and
right,
and that is how it was. And the instrument accession that the Maharaja Hari Singh used was exactly
exactly.
the same that all the princely states used.
Yeah,
There was
Hyderabad,
absolutely no
Jamnagar,
difference.
everybody used the same, right?
Right.
So
So now
if
to debate using a different benchmark and threshold is absolutely absurd.
yeah, so it is just like that. Okay, the head is mine and tail is also mine.
Yeah,
You know.
exactly. Yeah.
So if your head suits me, okay, that's fine. If tail suits me, that's fine. So
Right.
it doesn't work in diplomacy, right?
Right.
So it doesn't work between the nations.
Right.
Uh, uh, and everybody understand there's no free lunches in
Correct.
diplomacy.
And I think we
So
have, like covered until 1960s a lot of ground, right? And
right,
now, as we go on to the 1960s, we see that 1961 war happened, but 1965 war that happened, where
yeah, that
Pakistan, attacked India at that
yep.
time. That is when US also helped Pakistan.
Obviously, see, uh, Pakistan has become like a satellite state of America by then. Okay,
Right.
and it has no democracy there. It was ruled by the military dictators, right? And America, being the oldest democracy, as it says, doesn't even support Pakistan in having a military rule,
Hmm.
right? So that was really against their values. What the constitution value, they always give give a highlights of that we are constitutionally democratic. But how you can support a military state who is sponsoring terrorism across the world, right? So that's a story we will discuss some other day. But coming back to 1965 Indo-Pak war, so Pakistan flooded sorry, America flooded Pakistan with their arms. This leads to the when the war happened, the US made weapons which were the saber jets as well as Penton tanks.
Hmm.
Pakistan used against India.
Right.
And even Pakistan thought that I will get a help of CETO and CENTO. I don't know if you know about CETO or
Yeah.
the viewers know about the CETO, the Southeast Asian Treaty Organization, right? And it
Right.
was created in 1955 to counter Soviet Union, and they signed it Manila in 1954. And who was the representative? Just see: United Kingdom, United States, Philippines, Thailand, Australia, France, New Zealand, and terror sponsor state Pakistan.
Right.
These were the Southeast Asian organization. And similarly, they have a central treaty organization, which was earlier called the Baghdad Pact,
Hmm.
because excuse me, because it was signed in Iraq, in Baghdad. So that later became the central treaty organization, and in which also the who were the members? The members were the Iran, Iraq, uh, Pakistan, United States, and England. So
Right.
if you see that however this when 1979 Iran withdrew from it after the fall of of their king monarchy, it was resolved. Okay, and and uh, he was also seeking that not only these countries, not only United States, but the countries of these CETO and CENTO will also come and help India, sorry, help Pakistan against against India, which was really and absurd also. But and the most annoying fact is that the U.S. government never released any statement. The White House, the Secretary, the State Department never released any statement that Pakistan is an aggressor. They are using its arms against India.
Actually, New York Times had reported like way back in 1972 that I mean, it did send the Seventh Fleet in 1971, but they were also planning to send the Seventh Fleet for the 1965 war. The only reason why they didn't go ahead was because the Vietnam War
Was going on.
was going on and it blocked that thing. So if Vietnam War was not going on and they had, some ships or to spare, they would
Yeah,
have sent.
yeah, exactly. And then you see that we lost a great leader at Tashkent, right? When
Hmm.
Shastriji went to in January of '66, when he went there and signed the treaty with, I think it was Yaya Khan over that time, right?
Right.
Yeah, Yaya Khan and Soviet Union said, okay, you come over there and let's have a peaceful treaty. So, of a stature of 4 feet 10 8, Prime Minister has shown that his real stature in on the world politics. That India is not going to bow even in front of the so-called superpowers like America, and they know how to defend themselves. And Yaya Khan was really shocked, and so to the its master America, right?
Right.
So and still we don't know how Lal Bahadur Shastri ji died. So you must have heard of the book which Robert Crawley has mentioned, right? Conversation with the Crow.
Hmm.
So I read that book a couple of years back, maybe 2 3 years back.
Right.
So when the journalist asked CIA, he was second in command of CIA, that in 1960s there was a lot of problem with the Cold War, but India was struggling with its own problems. We have famines, a lot of famines happens in 55, 59, 62. India has war with 62, and within 2 years or 2.5 years, India again fight another war with Pakistan. So he said, how come Shastri and Homi Jahangir Baba died within a span of 13 days? Shastri died on January 11th, and Homi Jahangir Baba flight went away, crashed in on January 24th, right? So
Right.
so he said, I want to highlight here the excerpts from there. We could have blown up over Vienna, but we decided the high mountains were much better for the bits and pieces to come down to.
Hmm.
Bits and pieces to come down to. Can you imagine how inhumane it was?
Right.
He said, what about the how many people went down with Bhava? And you know
Hmm.
what? The journalist name was Douglas,
Yeah, Douglas.
Gregory
Hmm.
Douglas. He
Right.
said, who cares?
Right.
Who cares? Who knows?
Right.
So it means you don't give anything about about the human lives, right?
And just for the context for people, Robert Crowley was actually a CIA officer with a rank of assistant director
Yeah, he
for
was
the
second in
clandestine
command.
operations.
Yeah, he was second in command to CIA. What goes? What orders came from White House
Right.
come directly to him because he was
Yeah, he
second in
was in
command
charge of all the covert operations for
worldwide.
CIA at that time.
Yeah, and it is the CIA, the Central
Right.
Intelligence Agency, right? And I know it was a Cold War, and FBI on the one hand and CIA on the other hand has it's millions of spies over the world, even
Right.
in their own friendly countries. They have,
Right.
right? And when it was asked about Shastriji, how about Shastriji? You know what he replied?
Hmm.
We'll nail Shastri as well.
Right.
And he continued, Robert Crawley continued, saying that, believe me, they were very close to getting nukes,
Hmm.
nuclear bomb. And so what if they nuke their deadly Paki army? Or may nuke the Panama Canal? Or even the Los Angeles? Who knows? You can have the nukes what you want, but other countries can't go for that. It's, what a
See,
type of hypocrisy is that, you know?
like this would have just been hypocrisy if that is all there was to it. We can discuss later on how U.S. actually Ronald Reagan's own State Department betrayed its CIA as well as a custom department to allow Pakistan to get the nukes. And it
Right.
facilitated the nukes, it facilitated the entire proliferation that happened later on, which
But
like
mhm,
later on in 2004 was euphemistically called the AQ Khan Bazaar of nukes. Like it was not like something that was discovered in 2004, that was
right.
facilitated all the way from 1970s to the 1990s by the US and NATO themselves, by Ronald
Yes.
Reagan. In fact, there's a book, Deception by Adrian Levy, where there's a statement where somebody says, if ever there was a nuclear attack on the US soil, you can lay its blame to the feet of just one person, Ronald Reagan.
Mm.
So, like US not just thwarted India to get the nukes, it actually helped Pakistan to get the nukes
Yeah, in
and the
1974,
entire technology behind it.
yeah, on May 18, 1974, when India has its first nuclear test in Pokhran, right, during Indira Gandhi time, and they call it a little Buddha, right?
Right.
So there were shackles in the alleys of the White House. How can India do that? Because Homi Jahangir Baba, if you see Homi Jahangir Baba, just 18 months, just in November of 1965, has made a radio announcement. I need the green signal from Shastri. I can make the bomb in 18 months. They were so close to make a bomb.
Right.
Because see, in China, we have a fought war in 1962. And
Right.
in 64, they have a nuclear arsenals, right? They,
Right.
they tested and they were successful. 1965, we have another war with Pakistan, right? A country which have just been got its independence on, you know how the independence, we lost 10 million people in that, right? It was a
Right.
bloodshed, which we have lost millions of people already, and which is going through a lot of crisis, whether it's domestic or international. How can they digest a country which such as which they never have thought of coming to have a nuclear arsenals, you know?
Right.
It's beyond their dreams, that how a country like India, which have a more than 50% of population who is under the poverty line, who don't have the money to feed, can have a nuclear bomb with them,
Right.
and that too which have a more cordial relation with their arch rival Soviet Union than with them. But they don't understand that what the things they have done in the past, that the relation has come to this level,
Right.
right?
Now, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's the point. We should always as an Indian American, should let our American folks also understand that American relations, what was before independence, how America helped them, how Ronald Reagan, how President Roosevelt and President Wilson helped Indian fighters to struggle for their independence with their words, with their establishment of their different books and all those. But on the other hand, when India really got independence and they need the Pakistan, they need America, America aligned with Pakistan just for their own benefits. That's why we always say that politics is reading between the words and understanding between the lines.
Right. So there is like one thing that I wanted to uh, like link here, which
Mm-hmm.
like not many people would know. That remember we had talked about Swami Vivekananda when he went to the U.S. To
Mm-hmm.
Chicago in 1893. The ship
Mm-hmm.
that on which he was, there was another passenger, Jamshedji Tata.
Yeah.
Now Jamshedji Tata and Swami Vivekananda started talking, and Jamshedji Tata was going there for getting the iron and steel plant to be constructed in India. So he was going there to make a deal for that. Swami Vivekananda told Jamshedji Tata that instead of importing the entire plant, what you should do is set up an institute or a place of learning for fundamental science in India.
Right.
And when
That's why.
Jamshedji Tata went back, he asked, Swami Vivekanand, saying it like in a letter, saying that I want to set it up and I want you to be the first dean of that, which Swami Vivekanand, rejected and said that like it has to be somebody who's a person of science.
Hmm.
And that is how the Indian Institute of Science was set up.
Set
Now it
up in
was
Bangalore, right?
Indian Institute of Science that was set up where Dr. Homi Bhabha was actually like there. He studied physics and all that, and he was there as well. His father and uncle were at the the TISCO, the Tata Iron and Steel plant in Jamshedpur, which was set up by Jamshedji Tata, like which he had brought from the US. The entire deal. But the thing is, it's the Indian Institute of Science for the fundamental like research that was set up like because of that whole thing that
Yes.
actually facilitated the entire and Vikram Sarabhai, Dr. Vikram Sarabhai also met
Sarabhai.
Dr. Homi Baba right there in Indian Institute of Science. That's
Right.
where the whole thing came together.
Yeah.
The thing
Yep.
is that even for science, which the US, India was very, very clear that, even our thinkers, our industrialists, our spiritual leaders were very clear that they wanted an independent way of thinking, our own like way of thinking, and not be dependent on the US, right?
Right. Do
So
you
I think like
remember?
that's a very interesting thing that
Yeah. Do you remember that cartoon published by New York in 2004-5 when
yeah,
India, the elite club of the space powers are in the building, in the room discussing
right,
something, and outside is an Indian scientist with a cow want to go inside.
right,
And when Indian government opposed that, because we have already set up our ISRO, Indian Space Research Organization, we have IITs, IM. Yes, we are far behind, no doubt of it. India is still far behind from from its partners, because now we are partners, right? Well, they are no more any enemies they call, but they are partner. But still, it is always said the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. So you have to take a single step to go for 1,000 miles journey. Unless you don't take that, you don't know what your destination is. You know what I
right.
mean?
Yeah, and see the thing is that like there was a very interesting book written by Gary Bass, and he wrote the Blood Telegram about the
Yeah,
all the atrocities that happened in Bangladesh. One of the
exactly.
interesting thing that he said there was that the U.S. mindset about India, especially at that time, and like we were discussing before the show about how Nixon actually thought of Indians and Indira Gandhi, but yeah, he said the entire mindset of the American elite is defined by two words: racism and misogyny.
Misogyny. Yes, that's
And
absolutely
that has
right.
been very true because if you see how the New York Times has always characterized India
Yeah,
and
Washington Post, New
Washington
York
Post,
Times.
even Wall Street Journal,
Wall Street
how they
Journal.
have always defined India, characterized India, specifically Hindus,
Yes,
has always
just
been with the right.
yeah. I was surprised in 2019, just before the elections, they called divider in chief Indian Prime Minister Modi, right?
And
And as soon as he won the election, he was no more a divider in chief.
no, but the thing is, see, like first of all, I find it very
That's
strange
the
that
height of
US
miscarriage.
has the gall, or the West has a gall to lecture India on democracy. You have
And
to understand that the last election that Modi won, 900 million people voted. It was the largest ever democratic election in human history. In
yes,
human history.
exactly, in human history,
Not one
and that too for
election,
one person.
yeah, not
That
one election comes even close to it.
yeah,
Half of it. And
because
still, these
total
guys have the
population of
gall to
America.
lecture India on democracy. And this guy did not only win the Hindu votes, he won the votes from the Muslim dominated
Muslims, from
areas,
Christians,
the
from
Adil
Sikhs, from
dominated areas,
Buddhists, right?
and they lied through their teeth. These like publications, Washington Post, New York Times, and New York Times is, like, remember, one of those like posts which actually published a fake news during the time, and like I think it was 1939, when like that new like news article was used by Hitler to attack Poland, because that's what, like they did. They were the instigators of Hitler attacking Poland. They are shameless. They publish fake news all the time, and they have the gall to say all these
This is
things.
the reason these big media groups has lost their credibility,
Right,
because they have become like I don't want to use like they have become the prostitutes of the money lenders.
right,
That's all. That's all they have become. Now what we are facing here as an Americans also, these are all propagated by these media,
right,
right? And that's another story we discuss sometime else. So uh, as you mentioned in 1971, yes, it was really, I will say, the bigotry, the racism. It was not only at the street level, but it was there in the White House at the upper level. And American has grapples this problem of racism and power in a very uh, uh, you know um, absurd manner, in which uh, they have let the world knows their actual faces, the real faces, when these documents were declassified couple of years back, like in
right,
1920 they have declassified. After 50 years they have the policy of declassifying the document. So when they declassified these documents, and I read some of the excerpts from there, it was really uh, shocking to me that that was the level of racism in the White House. So it doesn't flow from bottom to top, but it flows from top to bottom.
right.
You know,
And
Mm,
the kind of things that he said, I mean, were like that Indians are sexless and
yeah. I can give you the right experts
right,
when they said Mr. Nixon and Kissinger. They staunchly supported the military juntas of Pakistan, who were raping the Hindu women. More than 2 million women were being raped. More than 3 million were killed. Hindu men were killed, and 10 million refugees were fleeing into the neighboring India. Even then, they said, "Oh, New Delhi is secretly training and arming the Bengali guerrillas." No, that was not. That was not the case.
right,
And the major stunt come when Indira Gandhi saw in June and July that millions of people are coming to India, and India itself is not a very rich country at that time. We don't have the Green Revolution by that time. we were struggling for our own people to get the food grain. So she went to, she asked her this guy, the ambassador to to USSR, please go ahead and make sure that you have close the treaty, whatever is required. So Mr. D.P. Dhar, he traveled to Moscow in the late July of 1971, and he concluded the Indo-Soviet Treaty of Peace, Friendship, and Cooperation on August 9. And then Indira Gandhi traveled to Moscow, and then they signed this treaty, and it says if one country is attacked, the other seems it will be attacked, like the article
Right,
5 of
right,
the
right,
nato.
right,
it
right,
was same like that, okay.
right.
So on August 9, 1971, when Kissinger informed the president Nixon about the Indo-Soviet treaty, Nixon inevidently raised the subject by noting that his that how the hell they are going to get billion of dollars from the Soviet, and we are going to stop all our aid to India.
Hmm.
So he said, Kissinger suggested that this is just an eyewash for America. They are not going to help each other. They were so overconfident that whatever they think will the world will go according to that way.
Right.
So that was, and before that also, if you see in the July and August, Nixon said Indira Gandhi is the most unattractive woman in the world.
Yeah. So he Nixon called Indian women as the most unattractive women in
Sexless.
the world, more
Sexless.
sexless. Nothing. These people. That's the word he
Yeah.
used.
It was a stunning conversation between Mr. Nixon, President Nixon, the advisor Kissinger, and the White House Chief of Staff Hedelman
Hmm.
in June of 1971.
Right.
He said he said in a very venomous tone, "Oh, these are the most unattractive women." And he continued, "The most sexless, nothing these people. I mean, people say, what about black American? Well, you can see something, the vitality there. I mean, they have a little animal like charm. But oh God, those Indian? Ah, pathetic. Oh, this was his expressions.
And then he goes on to say, to me, they turn me off, as if talking to other people is something like a sex adventure for like these
President.
politicians. Yeah,
Yeah,
but Henry Kissinger was no less. He actually said of Indians, they are a scavenging people. And
yeah.
then explaining, he said their great skill is to suck up to people in key positions, when it was quite the opposite, because actually India and the Indian leaders were trying to get away like from the US. That is why they had the non-aligned movement.
He also used the word bastard. You know that?
Yeah, yeah.
President Nixon said, "Do the Indian have that take even a cating for Christ, a 17-year-old?" In a crosstalk between these, they use word bastard as well as bachelor many times. Okay, and they said Kissinger that, "Oh, they're super flatterers,
Yeah.
Mr. President. They are the masters at flattery. They are the masters at subtle flattery. That's how
Mm.
they survive 600 years. They suck up. Their
Right.
great skill is to suck up the people in the key position."
Hmm.
And then he continued saying, "This I am telling about in the June, July, August, when they were talking about the problem which India was saying to America, that we are getting a lot of refugees problem. When again on August 10th these things happened, Mr. Kissinger voices were prejudiced about Pakistani too. He said to President, "I tell you, Mr. President, the Pakistanis are fine people, but they are primitive in their mental structure."
Hmm.
Okay. Now you can see the line they have created for the South Asian as a whole, I will say now.
Right.
Okay. So they said, okay, these were the flow of the racism from the
Mhm.
White House, and how they can say that we are against racism. So
Right.
I am very these declassified White House tape confirmed a very starkly different picture to the world, right?
Right.
Racism,
Right.
um,
Misogyny and all those things.
misogyny,
Right.
uh,
See, the thing
and
is
it was
that,
covered for decades on the
right.
pretext that, oh, these are the literature claim of the national security. What the heck is national security here? It's a simple conversation between two gentlemen. I will not say gentlemen, between two conversation between two men in the White House who are
Right.
ironically at the highest position,
Right. And
which
I
I
think,
think is even not good for the America if you
right.
have the people of such mentality at the top positions.
Right. And I think that is like, so when the common people in America, and this is for the audience, do not understand why US has not, why the India has not aligned with the US
For so long
so easily and so for so long, it is because
of their
US
mentality.
has treated India as like in a very racist and very colonial manner. Like it has taken the template that the British had, and they have used it like ever since 1947, and hoped that India would respond in the same way as colonial slaves. And
Right.
that never happened. And that has been their biggest, uh, like,
Problem to them.
misgiving. Right.
Yeah. And these guys didn't stop here. When Indira Gandhi visited in November, after she concluded her treaty with Soviet Union in September, his personal advisor advised him that you should also go and talk to Mr. Nixon. So they arranged a meeting with them. So when he visited, Indira Gandhi visited on November 4th and 5th. So according to Kishinger, he has written in his memoir. Okay, I'm reading the exact word from there. Okay, I'm not saying from my
Hmm.
this thing. He said, Indians are bastards anyways. They are starting a war there. While Gandhi was a bitch, we got what we wanted to. She will not be able to go back and say United States didn't give her a warm reception and therefore in despair she is going to go to war.
Hmm.
Can you imagine that? You are also talking such filthy words against the head of state of another country. What if he had called you a dog or any of the words? But Mrs. Gandhi didn't maintain her decorum, maintain her culture, maintain her values, right?
So,
Even
so let me put this in context. Like this is like if Joe Biden goes and talks in like India, or like talks to the Indian Prime Minister about the war in Ukraine, and India calls Biden a bastard and person who sucks up to all these things and is a senile idiot, and like helps Ukraine directly by sending arms, which or like Russia by sending arms. That is like how it is. So like today, I mean, this was how Nixon and Kissinger treated like Indira Gandhi at that time. Today Canada actually has its like has hosted a lot of terrorists and entire Khalistani like gang there, and they have taken out you know processions with floats where they have clearly showed like Indira Gandhi being assassinated, and that
right
like that is being shown very openly and very
that they
proudly.
don't have no democracy in Canada.
Like it is
Democracy is
like
all
somebody say in India showing a float of the entire 9/11 attacks, and saying very proudly this is great that it happened,
yeah
because that is exactly what the Canada like is doing.
yeah
And like
exactly
they are saying that if India says that it should not be done, then India is actually like meddling in their internal politics. Really?
yeah.
Really?
See the height of hypocrisy these Western countries do, which I don't like. And even as an Indian American, I think that the time has come when we should tell spade the spade. Okay,
Right.
enough is enough. So even during the war, coming back to what happened during the Indo-Pakistan War in 1971, they have never thought India will go on a full war on both the sides, because
Right.
they said, okay, India had just fought a war in 1965 on one front, so they are not going to open both the sides. And because, and before that, when Soviet Union treaty happened, Nixon was very, very adamant to have a good relation with China. Okay,
Right.
and who helped them? Ayub Khan. Ayub Khan
Right.
was the dictator at that time in Pakistan, and in the June and July, he set up the meetings between. He was a negotiator, I think, between America and China, and he knows that, okay, if I become the negotiator, at least I will take my bagging bowl to White House, and Mr. Nixon will put a few $1 billion over there, and I will come happy with my bagging bowl. Okay,
Right.
so that's how it was happening. And even at that time, Kissinger as well as Nixon put a whole pressure on China, that we should and that's the conversation they had, that if we put the pressure on China to have a war with India, India will have to take its cue from its from eastern and western, and have to fought to the Himalayas. So it will be a good strategy. So he said, I think we have to get to tell the Chinese the same movement on their part towards the Indian movement border would be very significant. And on December 8th, they even transfer the planes to Pakistan and tell the China, if you are ever going to move, this is the time,
Hmm.
because it's our bluff. It's our
Right.
bluff. And even the CIA reports mention that both of these men believe that India has intention to dismember Pakistan and destroy its armed forces. So, seeing that, Nixon asked Kissinger that let's decide how we can help Pakistan, and they sent an aircraft carrier and other naval forces into the Bay of Bengal, so
Right.
that India will come under pressure. And the word they use is, let's let's pressurize India so that Soviet stooge supported by Soviet arms will come to its knees.
Hmm.
Soviet stooge. We are not any stooge of anybody. India has a history of millions of years back.
Right.
We have seen the invaders from Middle East, from upper parts of Himalayas.
Right. And I
So
think, like one of the things is when we have earlier in our discussions talked about how the trust in the U.S. as a force, or as a force of morality, or as a power which has any morality, has actually withered away because of its own conduct. And like when people go on ad nauseum trying to indict India for like partnering with the Russians or Soviet Union earlier on, they forget that the reason, and Dr. Jaishankar, India's foreign minister, said very clearly, the reason why India partnered with the Soviet Union was because US chose to help the dictatorial regime of
of
Pakistan
Pakistan, right?
unleash its terrorism on India all the time, and attacks on India
And
all the
then they
time.
said good terrorism, bad
Yeah,
terrorism. How
right,
can a terrorism can be good and bad?
right,
So
and
one terrorism which blow the world at center is a bad terrorism, but
right,
other terrorism which kill hundreds of people in Mumbai is a good terrorism.
yeah. So I think, like there is a context to the whole thing. If we are democratic people, which I believe most of us are, and we
Right.
we value democracy, we value freedoms of expression, of speech, and all the other things, then I think, and if we have, and if we value morality in its very basic fundamental sense, then I
Mm-hmm.
think it's very important for us to view things in the correct way and not make up things. That when these ideas, they become weapons, to actually subjugate and to further a colonial, structures, then I think it becomes a problem.
Right.
So we should be very serious when we use these terms of freedom, of democracy, and you know morality and all those things.
Right, right, and the thing is that Deshji, that if you see at during 1971, America was ready to fight a nuclear war with Soviet Union,
Right,
and the scapegoat is Indian continent,
right,
subcontinent at that time. It doesn't matter if the nuclear bomb was thrown at India or Pakistan. It's the border on the land, but not on the air, right?
right,
You
right.
know what I mean?
Correct.
If Karachi is bombarded with nuclear weapon, or Lahore, or Islamabad, God forbid, it will have a ripple effect on India too, because the air will come, the radioactive pollution will come, and India will also suffer a lot. Air doesn't know that this is India, or air
Right,
doesn't know this is Afghanistan, air doesn't know this is Pakistan. Now you can see a very good example. The fire happened in Canada, and what's we have here? We were choked for 3 days
right,
in New York, New Jersey,
right,
because it was like the whole sky was orange.
right,
Fire doesn't know, smoke doesn't know any borders. You know what
right,
I mean?
right. Exactly.
Because in that, I will just take 10 more seconds. Because in their conversation at that time, they don't call it, was not Beijing, it was Peking, right? Because
Right,
China was Peking at that time. So they said if Chinese intervene, Nixon asked, what do we do if the Soviet move against them? Start lobbing the nuclear weapons? Kissinger paused and later answered, we don't have to lob the nuclear weapon, we have to go on alert. We may have to put forces in, we may have to give them bombing assistance. Bombing assistance.
hmm,
See the words and their foreign policies.
hmm,
This will provide an opportunity to clean up Vietnam at this point by giving an ultimatum to Hanoi and blocking the aid to the Hebung harbor, because they were facing a lot of criticism in America for the
right,
American people, because Vietnam War is still there, and the people are getting dead bodies, right?
right,
Nothing
right,
else they are gaining, which I think America has not won any war, whether it's the Vietnam War, whether it's the Korea War, whether it's the war in Afghanistan. We have seen the disaster. It's a war in Iraq. I don't know why they went out for the war, but they just want to divert the attention of the people from Vietnam to another front.
right.
So, is this the way the country foreign policies work out? I wonder.
I think with that, I think we can close today's discussion, which is quite long, but I think
Yeah,
it's very,
exactly.
very, very informative. I think from
Exactly. And we
uh,
can we
yeah,
can do some other time that
yeah,
how after 1970s, after the Nixon
right,
was shut out of the White House after the
right,
Watergate scandal, right?
right.
So how the Indian relation developed till what is now.
Correct. So in the next episode, we'll go through from 1970s to the current point, and
Right.
so we'll like cover the different aspects and the different regimes and different presidents and prime ministers. So thank you, Mr. Ankush Bhandari, for all this wisdom and information, because it's very like difficult and rare to find people who have that kind of background and understanding. And like it was a very, very interesting like discussion that we had. So
Yeah.
thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much.
And I would like put the link of Mr. Bhandari's book that he has co-authored, and I'll also put the link for our Drishtikon newsletter, which you can always subscribe for free. It comes out on Sunday every week. So thank you so much.
Thank
Namaste.
you. Have a nice weekend.
Yeah,
Namaste.
man, namaste.
Bye.